Waiting on you, Sean.
Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am stoked. We got the return of Dean, we got the return of Steve, we got the return of James, and the return of Sean as well. This is awesome. So while I am stoked, make sure you are as well. Do the things, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which of course, Fridays for the Gold Mine, Fridays for the Collective, Wednesdays for the Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, kind of like this one right here, Session Motion. Good morning, team. Put it up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show. And if you have not yet, make sure you're signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter. It goes out with all the things we do collective on this side of the house, as well as a little bit of brain candy for y'all to chew on throughout the week. So with that out of the way, let's get into the intros. Dean, it's been a while, man. Give us a little quick 10 to 15 seconds. Who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I was calling from Orange County. Nice to join you guys again. It's been since you and I, Chance, were chatting, that took a bit of a sabbatical from the podcast, Will, just as things were changing in my life. So, as you know, my history, and now taking the leap into the corporate world in the private investment space. So, sort of getting my teeth into that for the last few months. The dust has settled and I'm back online.
Awesome. I love it. Steve, how about yourself?
Coming from the great state of Texas now. Absolutely love it here. But yeah, I've been part of this podcast many times and I love every topic we do. And, you know, my background is out there already, but it's retired law enforcement, and I was in the military for 6 years, and now I contract overseas for the last 10 years, and I currently do that.
Bam. I love it. And buying cows soon, which is fantastic. I love it. James, how about yourself?
Yeah, James Geering, not in any way, shape or form as dangerous as the previous two guests, but a firefighter for 14 years, and now host of the Behind the Shield podcast, trying to put wellness back into the world.
I love it. Sean, how's the mountain treating you?
Things are good. We left out a few things from the guest panel, though. I mean, at the top now, we've got Steve, and Steve had the opportunity to mention how frickin' rad his girls are and how much they crush as a family. So, you know, that's relevant to the topic at hand that we're going to be diving into. I've just literally watched Dean adapt to the situation of some guy skulking around at his 6 o'clock, so he's had to adapt to the situation. James is on a constant adaptation cycle of, as I see it, predominantly social media. Fighting the good fight on social media is where I see most of James' adaptation in our modern world, and then that leaves you and I, Chance, trying to adapt on podcast platforms. And I look back on what we've done, you know, just over the last 7 days, we've been putting podcasts in the can that people don't get to see. And that is a part of adaptation. What we did just a couple of days ago in a podcast won't be released for maybe a couple of more months now. And I'll be a different person then than I am when I recorded that just the other day. So adaptation, if this is a topic we're going to kick into, is like front and foremost every second of our day.
Truly it is. And it's been quite a bit. We adapt to everything every day, I think, at least a little bit. And I want to get right into the conversation. So I'm going to hit Steve up right off the bat. When you got the invite earlier today, or you saw the commercial last night, the little teaser, what came up when you first heard about adaptability?
Well, the first thing that came up is how we raised our daughters, and we used forced adaptability to them when they were raised. And so the more you can flex through life, the better you can get through solutions, and you're not just hitting condition black. The second thing that immediately went to my mind is, you know, being on the SWAT team for 19 of those years, we used adaptability quite a bit. And so, but it really takes me back now to like my daughters, because now that they've grown up, being adaptable to certain things of growing up and what we do as a family, but now that they're in athletics and they compete, you know, what if the weight doesn't go that you want? What if the round doesn't go the way you want it to go? What if the rower breaks? What are you going to do? So I used all those training little key points as they were younger I forced adaptability onto them to train them to realize how to recognize it and it's okay. Just figure out a solution and get around it. And so it just helped them build them into be better athletes as they grew into this more competitive realm. And we use it constantly. I mean, constantly. We talk as a family every night, like every night. And so we use what we do during the day. We debrief workouts every night. I mean, we are heavily into communication, but there's always adaptability. I mean, it's all around you. I mean, like Sean said, I'm going to adapt. I'll be a little bit different because you're uploading experience, you're uploading information, and you're going to change to that if you have to, right? So that's what came.
I'm digging it. The integration of lived experience into the next stage. I dig it. Dean, what was your first thoughts?
Yeah, very similar to Steve. We're talking about adaptability. From where we were as children to where we are today, and the journey along the way, how we sort of instill that into our children, but without like forcing that adaptability, but naturally it just come in. From our own one, my family moving, from UK to US in the middle of COVID during a time where no one knew what was going on, and how they've just naturally settled into that. So I think if you give them a safe space around them, people are very resilient. They're like, especially my daughter, she's like a chameleon. Everywhere she goes, she'll just naturally fit in to that space. But yeah, and it also comes back to, times in the special forces. I always say that, we're very expeditionary in the fact that, we used to go into places and would have a little bit of information, and then you just make the rest work from what you see. So you just adapt to the situation that's in front of you, and you need to sort of navigate and change that as well, because as we know, things never always go to plan. So adaptability is key, whether it's in the special forces, whether it's with your family, or whether it's in the corporate world as well. As we're seeing at the moment, speaking to so many people, especially back in Europe, the tariffs, everyone's having to flex in their businesses, in the way that they operate and do things as well. So yeah, adaptability is key throughout life, everything you do.
Could not agree more. James, what was your first thoughts?
It really made me think of the role of the firefighter paramedic in America. I mean, we are the jack of all trades, master of none. We have like a Swiss Army knife, and what doesn't require law enforcement or the criminality side, we're called to everything from, the baby is wheezing to there's a snake in my garden. I mean, you name it, we're there to mitigate people's disasters. But what's interesting is, as I progress through my career and then out the other side, it's also requiring that very profession to be adaptable. And I'm sure Steve's probably seen this in law enforcement. We're so good with other people's disasters adapting, but when it comes to the issues that are facing recruitment, longevity, health, performance in the first responder profession, one of my biggest pushes to force adaptability, because we're just entrenched in the way we've always done it. So it's going to be interesting to see that paradox as we unpack this topic.
Oh, interesting. Sean, what do you got? You look like you got notes.
Yeah, I don't usually take them, but the boys were throwing so many things out there. I was trying to cobble it all together and see what I've got here. So, interestingly enough to me, what I scribbled down is Steve was talking about how, his daughters, or how the family as a whole at the end of the day do a after action report or do a debrief. And I've, I follow everyone on the panel, and I see what's going on in Steve's sort of social media daily life, as it were. And I'm a big fan of how Steve runs his personal family life. And it was just a video a few days ago where I saw him not jacking up his family, but just like being to some degree a bit of a hard ass, and not like mean-spirited hard ass. He was just keeping it real, and that realism was something that has been in place for a long time throughout his pattern with his family. Just keeping it real. It's not harsh feedback, it's direct and clear feedback. And that direct and clear feedback typically always ends in and this is what we're going to do about it. And this is how we're going to work together as a team. As a family, we're going to ... So that's what I always see from Steve. His family is a result of performance checks. Like, they are in a They are in a construct. He's created a construct, or the family's created a construct where they're held accountable by kind of like almost harsh milestones that they have to accomplish in the day, whether it's through CrossFit or whatever the case is. They are performance checking each other on the daily. And then Dean has said something really interesting about his daughter and how she is a chameleon to some degree in certain ways, and that can be born into you, but generally it's a result of good parenting. It's either Dean has passed it on to his daughter knowingly or unknowingly. These chameleon-like aspects just aren't magic. They are typically abilities that are refined over time. And if she's really good at adapting in real time, that's because you're really good at adapting in real time, Dean. And so the family sees you and they emulate accordingly. And that has been the case for my family, certainly, that I've seen it to be true. And so, adaptability is a learned thing through observation in Dean's case, but it's also a passed along thing, as in Steve's case, and of course observed. And then James as the example, as we talk about adaptability, just in the time that we've been podcasting, Chance and I, which is coming up on just over 2.5 years, we've adapted, but so has James. And when I first came onto podcasting, I looked at James as like the man in my eyes, because he'd been podcasting so long and so many guests, and James was so good at it that I held James up to some degree on a pedestal as to, he's got it figured out and I've got to figure it out just like he's got it figured out. But now James is shaking his head, and James is right. None of us have got it figured out. None of us. We're all just freaking doing our best. And that's the piece about adaptability, man, that I'm going to wrap this all up with. You'll never adapt, ever, unless you want to be better in life. That's what adaptation is. You change your ways in order to be better at your ways. Our podcasting has changed significantly since we started till today, just because I'm relentless on pursuing excellence. And we have sucked so bad in the past that we've had to change. So adaptability is required when you want to be better at something in life.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And I have a really interesting point that you brought up, Sean, that I want to touch on, but I got a couple comments I want to hit. Satch Emotion. I'm looking forward to everyone's perspective on adapting and overcoming. Good to see you, Satch, again. Dan C. Good morning, gentlemen. Talking about a cast of ass kickers. I could not agree more. Now, my initial thought on this is, when I was thinking about adaptation, was evolutionarily speaking, in terms of adaptation is to find fitness, is like to find your fit within a niche, right? And I just love the fact that it can become a deterrent, let's put it that way, to step out of that niche once you find it, because you've set yourself into a little bit of hole. But that is the kind of idea behind getting out of your comfort zone. I'm just digging where we're going so far. So I'm going to go around one more time, check in.
So
what are you
hang
thinking?
on a sec, Chance, can you just refine that down just a touch more to like a couple of sentences?
I find it interesting that as adaptability is built into becoming a niche, as in the fitness of a particular environment that you're getting yourself into. So me moving into jiu-jitsu, I start to do jiu-jitsu, and then I get better at jiu-jitsu, and then it makes it more challenging for me later on to move to something else where I have to then readapt, if that makes sense. Tracking?
I'm tracking what you're saying, but what I'm hearing is the total opposite of what I believe. And so, using your example of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as when you stepped onto the mats for the first time as a white belt, you knew nothing. Now you're a solid purple belt. Now you know a bunch of things. So as you were adapting through that process, you weren't just adapting in the process, you were learning to adapt. You were learning who you are within the world. And as you learn to adapt more and more, you get better at adapting in other things. And therefore, what I'm suggesting, which is, I think, different than what you're suggesting, unless I misheard you, is if you get good at adapting in anything, you're getting good at adapting in everything. And therefore, adaptation refinement is super important so that you can apply it against everything in your life.
I dig it. I dig it. Let's go around. Steve, what do you got? What are you thinking?
I don't know. Maybe I took that as kind of like you're saying that maybe your niche is your comfortability and you're forced to adapt and you don't want to adapt because it's something new. That's the initial onset. And then we lead into what Sean's saying 100%. As you get comfortable and you start doing it more and you're forced to adapt and you feel comfortable adapting, you'll increase the adaptability and then you'll be more likely to move to something else where you can adapt to that and it won't be fearful for you anymore. And it's exactly between the two of your concepts. That's what we did with our daughters. So I forced adaptability onto them. And so I used my experience from the team atmosphere, same as the panel has, that we've all been on a team, right? So we all have contingency plans because if the primary doesn't go, we don't sit there and look at a task that can't get done. We move on, we adapt. So we forced it onto the girls under controlled environment. We talked them through it as they got comfortable. And then they started to realize in different avenues of their life with athletics or on the ranch or riding horses or doing whatever they're doing or playing a sport, they're like, hey, it didn't go the way I wanted to. This is it. Now they're drawing on experience that they can adapt and overcome this and they can find a solution much faster. So I've always told the girls and my team when I was a team leader, I want you to find a problem as fast as possible. Now in training, with the girls at home, we're in training, we're building you. I'll give you time to find that solution, but I'm going to help you, give you some advice on how to find it faster. And then you slowly strip away back and you let them take over the control of how they react to it, how they can overcome it. And is the next best thing, their next solution, is it achievable or did they just grasp too much and just come up with an answer to get out of it? And so you just start to fine tune those things. So in my environment as on a team through my whole adulthood life in the Army and in the SWAT team, my daughters on our family, they're on a team. I've said this before. They were born with me and my wife, and this is their team. They have team leaders and we have people within. My sole job is to get them up to my level as fast as possible. I have no value at holding more information or more knowledge or more experience over them just to say I have it over them. I want them to gain it and have it as much so because they can make decisions and they can move faster. They can be stronger, faster, and better than I was at their age. That was our whole goal. My wife played collegiate soccer, semi-pro soccer. I mean, I wasn't really athletic. I rodeoed, but my wife was. So that's where my daughters probably get it from. But it's the same thing. It's like I wanted our daughters to have as much information as possible to be able to adapt and overcome certain things and make decisions and make the right decisions.
I dig it. Dean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, as you notice, I keep moving, so I'm adapting on the move. I'm hard targeting everywhere. So I've had to adapt this morning in the fact that my wife has the office, and so I've now to find a space, which is normally pretty much empty. But today, for the first time ever that I've been here in 5 years, that there's a team meeting, so they're all having lunch. So always adapting, expect the unexpected, as I say. But actually, listen to yourself, Chance. What I sort of got from that was that when you're in your comfort zone, you don't like to step out of it. So some people don't want to adapt because they are comfort in their comfort zone. And so, and I'm sort of trying to reference the stage that I'm at in my life at the moment is I always say that you have evolutions in life. Your time in the military was an evolution. You then left the military, you went into your next line of work. So for me, the military was me, and I got to Tier 1 Special Forces, which was great. So I got to the top there. And then obviously had the parachuting accident, and then worked in the security industry, built up a great reputation there in 15 years. Then I take it into sport, and the problem is because you're always overachieving and succeeding, you're always thriving for that. As I mentioned to you guys, I've now stepped out my comfort zone and now work in the private investment firm. So, but for me, everyone, the eyes on me now is like, well, he succeeded in all of them. So is he going to do the same in this? So But you never know. But yeah, I think it's taking yourself out of your comfort zone, always learning, always adapting. But if you master it in one area, I think when I speak around the world, I talk about that. Special forces, security, never cycled before, but then became the first man in history to cycle under 100 days. And it's not because I'm a sports person, it's because I took certain particular skill sets from my experiences. I use a phrase, you can't be experienced without experience. And so, I just take that from every evolution I go on and just adapt it into something new. And that's what it is for me, is this corporate world. If you told me last year that you'd be working 9 to 5 with a suit and tie, I'd start sweating, you know what I mean? But actually now I'm here and I'm working alongside these guys. It's another high performance team. It's just wearing a different uniform. But yeah, I'm taking myself out of my comfort zone and I'm adapting quite reasonably. Yeah.
On the
I'll
fly.
probably be hard target and a little bit long until I finish London. Yeah.
I do love watching just watching the way you move as you are tracking everybody at the same time. I dig it. James, what are you thinking?
So I'm going to play the Uno reverse card, team chance. What's interesting, because I agree 100%, the way that you become more adaptive is obviously, being forced into situations where you have to adapt. And that's a skill set and makes 100% sense. What blows me away, though, is you have a profession like mine where adaptability is so, so important. And as you progress through your career, you have to be this crazy problem solver. You go to what you think is a house fire, and now all of a sudden there's a medical emergency, and then there's a rope rescue needed. And, these people have to do all these things on the fly. But then, for example, you get to transition and you have this firefighter paramedic that had the ability to work under pressure, work with teams, problem solve, all these great skill sets. And then they go, well, all I could do is teach at a fire academy. Or a cop goes, all I could do is just be a security person now. And so you've had this highly adaptable profession. And then all of a sudden, to Chance's point, it's kind of paralyzing. You haven't allowed yourself to realize that the adaptability exists beyond the skill that you did. And it's the same with my profession. You've got these high stress, high performing roles, and yet the profession hasn't adapted as far as the work week and fitness standards and some of these other areas. So I'm going to kind of bounce it back to everyone. Why is it that professions like ours that are known for adaptation struggle in some areas when it comes to adaptation?
Sweet. Somebody's backing me. I love this. Sean, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
Hey, I'll back you. I threw you under the bus, and I'll throw you a lifeline and pull you back out from under the bus. No worries, buddy. And so here, and for real, I am going to back you. And it's an easy one to make. It's an easy case study to kind of put under the microscope. So, irrespective of Chance's background, and he's got a great background, a notable background, irrespective of it. The day that I met Chance in the podcasting world, I knew very little about him. But, to Dean's point, as he was mentioning, there's something about special operations. And I'm not going to say it's all like, if you're not special operations, you're not special. That's not my point. There's something about special operations that teaches you something. And it taught me a few things. And one of the things that I learned how to do was be highly adaptive under chaos. I like it. I like being highly adaptive under chaos. And when I stepped into podcasting, to me, it was chaos. And I had to be highly adaptive. But unlike some podcasters, I was now a podcasting team. It was Chance and I, not just myself. If it would have just been me podcasting, man, it would have probably been a worse freak train wreck for sure. But that's not my point. My point is this, that when we started podcasting, we had to do it as a two-person team. And we were two very different people. Because of my background and Chance's background being so different, because of our life experiences being so different, because I'm like 20 years older than Chance, basically. We're two very different men. But we had to rapidly start learning how to work together in podcasting. There was massive adaptation, and there still is. But in that first year, it was bonkers because we were doing one podcast a day and we didn't even know what we were doing. Basically, we'd both climbed into like a Ferrari without a driver's license, and I was behind the wheel, and I was a lunatic. And so we've adapted, and here we are now. And so one thing that I can say for sure is I've got a fiery pace. The other thing that I can say for sure is Chance not only kept up with it, but he's kept me freaking honest. So, like, I like to go hard, but he's making me go harder. Because it's not that he's got my back. It's not that he's like propping me up. It's not that he's carrying my baggage. He's like the man. He's like the main host of this podcast. I just try to keep up with him now, but I do like pushing. So maybe it is a teamwork thing. So adaptability being the point, I've had to do a whole bunch of adaptation to work with Chance. Chance has had to do a whole bunch of adaptation to work with me. And that is the beautiful thing about teamwork. Like it doesn't matter who's the best, who's the slowest, who's the tallest. None of that matters. What does matter is the outcomes that are produced. And if you're looking to produce good outcomes as a team, then you've got to rapidly adapt to the team because the team isn't just one person who's the man. And so Dean knows it, Steve knows it, James knows it, Chance knows it, I know it. Adaptability is something that you can learn for sure by yourself, but you'll learn it way faster and way more impactfully if you're doing it with a team.
I do appreciate all that, but you didn't answer James's question, which is why.
Right, I'll try and answer it.
Dean,
if I've interpreted it right, I think we're very fortunate in the special forces community in the fact that, when we're doing a mission set of orders, we have the execution, how we're going to do it. And when we talk about that, we go through all the different potential scenarios and we talk through those scenarios. What we also have a luxury of as well in the special forces, almost replicating those scenarios. So when it comes to the day of the race, you can't replicate all scenarios and adapt to all, but you can primarily do a lot of them. And so for you, James, I no doubt that when you go to a vehicle fire, you know what you're doing with vehicle fires. All these other anomalies get thrown in. And so as long as you have that basis, we're in the special forces teams, like I said, we're lucky that we'll try and rehearse all them. We'll never get to it, but we have enough experience, enough knowledge between the team that we can adapt to that. I mean, our mission always is success, mission success. So we'll do whatever is means possible. So it might be a little bit different in the fire services. You may not have that luxury of replicating those scenarios. I know you have training, but those vehicle scenes, cutting people out, throwing in casualties, throwing in all these other scenarios, because that seems to happen in the special forces. When you manage to master it, they'll just throw in a curveball. And so I think that's where myself, Sean, and Steve have that luxury, and it then becomes sort of instilled in you that everything you plan, you assume is not going to happen. and that's what I've done. Everything I've done, if it does, then brilliant. But I generally I couldn't put my hand on my heart and say I know one thing that what we plan for from the start, from the idea to the delivery went to plan. And I think we're just very fortunate in the special forces community that it's embedded in us in an early part of our career. And we do have the funding and the luxury of having all those assets and trying to replicate those scenarios as well. So I think that might give us that little bit of an advantage. I hope that answered it.
Not really, but good try. Steve, what are you thinking?
So I'll give it a shot there, James. Were you asking why is it in your profession or our profession on a team that we're highly adaptable and we can come up with solutions and we can flex and we can do all this stuff, and then when we separate from that, we're by ourselves and we like lose the adaptability to push ourselves to do things and adjust to things?
Why is it that we are so effective and adaptable in our profession, but for example, when a recruitment crisis happens because of poor leadership decisions, or we have a physical and mental health crisis in our profession, the profession as a whole won't adapt to work weeks, higher training bars, fitness standards, pushing back on defunding, that kind of thing. And then the same thing applies to transition. A highly adaptable police officer or firefighter then struggles to adapt once they transition out of the profession into whatever is next.
Okay, so on the transitioning out, here's my take on that, right? So, and I think everyone can probably understand this. When you leave a team and you come back and you're by yourself and you're with your family, and I don't know the connectivity you have with your family, some are separated, some are very connected, but then you look at these individuals and you're like, I used to know you. You used to have all kinds of drive. You were leading this. Why won't you go out there and do? And it's like we lose that purpose because we're by ourselves and we're not part of a team anymore. It's easier to rely on 4 dudes and yourself than it is to just put everything on you. And oftentimes what we'll do is everything that we trained out of, like, don't give yourself an excuse not to achieve this. Don't give your excuse not to go 100%. Be the one. When it comes to you, you're like, eh. And I use this I use this analogy all the time. You would never drive a vehicle ever with 3 tires, ever. You would fix the tire right away. But when you're by yourself and you self-sabotage yourself and you lose interest to motivate yourself to go do things, it's like driving the vehicle on 3 tires. Like, nah, I'm good. No, you're not good. So I think there's a disconnect of the team. I've talked to a lot of veteran organizations from all MOSs in the military, and you're part of something special, and your perceived special difference, right? Whatever unit you're in, but you're part of a team. And when you come out, now you're just John packing boxes unless you make something of yourself. And so it's weird how that happens. And I've seen it in law enforcement too. Like cops, they don't have a very good lifespan after they leave that job, and they get into alcohol, and then they just get isolated. And then they get hermits. They don't want to leave the house because they've dealt with the public for so long. My thing that I think that helps with that is, yes, you're part of the job. Yes, that's what you love to do, but that is not everything about you. That's why I'm so heavy into the family and athletics and coaching, and I do multiple things. That way, I don't just rely on only one thing. Like, I was the team leader on the SWAT team. I did this many missions. I jumped out of a helicopter. That was a part of what I love to do, but I'm not there anymore. This is what I love to do now. So I don't need to hang on to that and say, I used to be that. You can still make yourself whoever you want to be now, right? And so different areas of interest, I would say, for you to be into while you're doing said profession helps you greatly when you transition. I transitioned out of law enforcement flawlessly. I mean, there's people that like miss it and they wish they were back. I'm like, not me. I love it. I mean, I'm living my best life because that's what I want. And then because I was so connected to my family. On the other question, real quick, you were saying about when like mental health becomes an issue in a department and people don't adapt to it. And I will say this, there are segments of groups that do push, but that's a big machine to change, And so if you have a firehouse or 2 firehouses out of 30 of them saying, we need this mental health counselor to help us after incidents of trauma, to get us through, to get us back to job, and look for the betterment of the firefighters or whatever job you're in. That's great. But if that big machine is just kind of pushing you out, it's hard. It's hard. I've been in a bunch of different changes for our department, which was very large, and it was just pocketed. And one of our things that we fought forever was a fitness standard. You would think like as simple as a fitness standard. It was like, oh my gosh, So I just think it's very hard to fight that big machine. Military is the same way.
So, Dean, what do you got? I saw you.
Now I understand the question. The so the transition thing, I don't think it's as a community, it's as the individual. That is at the end of the day, that's down to the individual if you want to change or not. I talked about transitions in life. Your time in the military was a transition. You need to the first person who needs to deal with that is that person themselves. It's hard because you come from an environment where everything's done for you. The mother, the father, they clothe you, they feed you. You know, we like to be part of a tribe. You know, that's definitely human nature in males. And so you're now out of that tribe. You're trying to find another tribe, but you also need a mission, a new mission. And that's where a lot of people, I get upset when veterans talk about stuff they did 15 years ago. That's great, but that's 15 years ago. You know, what are you doing now? And a lot of them are really stuck back in that era. It's like, well, what are you doing now? What is your next mission? And because the government, whether it's the fire brigade or the military, because they've held your hand through this process, it's time for you to grow up. I know I'm a mental health advocate. It's time for you to grow up and do it yourself, because it's been handed to you. Don't expect it to, so yes, you're going through an identity crisis, but what's your new identity? As Steve said, it might be more time with your family. But yeah, I get pissed when these people are like, oh, but 15 years, whatever, 15 years ago, what are you doing now? So at the end of the day, it's not a government. There's an element of the government stuff that they need to help them, but let go of the government's hand, do it yourself.
Bam. Sean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking that I now understand the question better. And I will say, and to James, I'm going to reverse order it. I'm going to start with the idea that James is actually trying to fight the big system right now, as Dean was referring to. And it's a freaking hard job, man. And good on you, James, because I'm not sure I could stay in that fight as long as you have, because it is an uphill, frustrating battle that you've been fighting. And I'm already old. I don't need to look like I'm a million years old by taking on that mission. And so all the power to you that that's what you've kind of taken on. But what is interesting about how hard that role is, or task is, that James has taken on, is that along the way, it's forced him to better understand adaptability for the solution. Like James, when he started this idea of trying to make it better for firefighters, first responders, all of that good stuff, like he probably had a few ideas and they probably sucked. And now he's got better ideas because he's had to adapt the solution. He's had to think outside of the box. He's been turned down so many times that he's had to invent new ideas. That's adaptability. He's had to be in the game so long that he's now maybe a SME, or subject matter expert, in adaptability on the subject. But is he creating outcomes? That's what it all comes down to. And so I feel that that's kind of the crux of the conversation as to James's question. Is he creating outcomes? Well, maybe James isn't, but maybe he's creating them for others a year from now. And that's the thing of it. Like, if we are to create adaptation within a larger system, as Steve said, it's hard to fix a big system. The things that we do now, we may never get to see the results of. But by talking about this, as James does, as he talks to people on social media or in his neighborhood, the ideas that he plants in their mind are like that tree that you plant that you never get to see grow 20 years from now. He's planting those oak seeds on the daily on social media within Firehouse chiefs. And they may not like him. They may not like the things he said yesterday or the things he'll say tomorrow. But they will hear it and they will think about it, even though they don't like it. And sometimes it takes that. It takes friction, tension, irritation to change a system. And so, again, James may not be seeing the adaptability that he wants within the broader system, that he's kind of fighting uphill, but eventually the system will change long after James is gone. But you've got to have faith that what you're doing is for the right reasons, is righteous, is good. Otherwise, you'll just frickin' quit. James would have quit years ago if he didn't know it was righteous. And so adaptability can be forced. Adaptability can show up out of the thin air, but none of it will happen unless you got a really strong reason to make change.
I dig it. Now, I have a question on that specifically, because I think there is a point where you have to cut and run. There's got to be a point where you say, okay, this is enough. I've adapted so far. I got to do something else, or I've pushed as hard as I can on this particular topic, and I gotta tap out and leave it for the young guns. I mean, we see it in the military, law enforcement, all first responders units, where you have the guy that won't retire, right? And then you're just so stuck on it. And so I just think that a lot of it comes especially down to, in terms of the institutions, it's line of sight, right? Like, I can affect you guys with what I'm saying. I can affect my community around me. I can affect the organization that I'm a part of within my direct chain of command, my direct line of sight. But once it's out of my line of sight, it's not it ceases to becoming as big of a priority. So I think, so to your point, James, like, why doesn't NDHQ in Canada understand what it's like to be a sapper at 1CR in Edmonton? Because they can't see it. They're nowhere near it. So no matter what the story they get or what information they're given, it's not as pertinent as what's in their direct line of sight, which is, the commanding of all of the Canadian forces. So I just think that was a piece of that.
There is just two things. Maybe I was a bit long in my explanation. I'll distill it down right now super quick. You can invest in adaptability. Like, you can force it in the short term and think that you're going to solve the world's problems like by tomorrow. You can try that. Or you can talk to a 20-year-old as a 60-year-old, invest a bit of time in them, and then move along and realize that 40 years from now, that 20-year-old will do good things with the information you just passed on. So you've got the short-term investment, or you've got the long-term investment, and they're both valid investments. But you got to figure out, as you look the person in front of you, like right in the eyes, you got to realize what's the best call for this person, short or long-term investment.
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say that, James, you've seen change already, right? Like, there have been some chiefs that are taking on what you're talking about. We've seen change in the military. I talked to some of the young guns now at like Remembrance Day and stuff like that, and some of the stuff that I was trying to get to happen is happening for them. So, like, you can see the change if you make your perspective, I guess, long enough in terms of time. Dean, you got something?
Yeah, just knowing James has done a lot of change. I think with James, the frustration is it's not going at the pace that he wants, if that makes sense, and having that impact at the top. And Alana's the same, my wife, in the human trafficking space. It's been in that space 24 years. She wants to end human trafficking, but then here in OC, they don't even know the difference, what a human trafficking person or a victim is. And so sometimes you want to be disrupting it at that top level, but sometimes, as you just touched on their chance, maybe just educating some of the younger individuals that they can have change in Irvine. But I hear where James is coming from, because he's a huge advocate in the mental health space, and he is having change. It's just frustrating, and I get it that it's not having that impact at the top level. And sometimes it just has to be the right person in the right seat, or it resonates with them. It's affected them personally. And that's the problem. As you mentioned, Chance, it's like, yeah, when you're talking to someone now, out of sight, out of mind, they sort of forget about it. But if they have been impacted personally, that's where change happens. And so I know that's what Alana does when she's with her human trafficking. She will seek out those that have been personally impacted and who can have impact. But yeah, no, I just want to reiterate, James is a massive advocate in this space, and he probably doesn't feel like he's doing a lot of change, but he's doing a hell of a lot of change.
So on that note, with Alana and with James, both of them have impacted me in big ways and small ways. And so here's a small way in respect to Alana. When we had her on the podcast talking about human trafficking, prior to the podcast, I'd done some research to try to understand where the kind of the critical centers or the ground zero of human trafficking originates from. What are some of these large hubs that are criminally responsible for, human trafficking? And so, as it turns out, Laos and Cambodia are complicit at a global scale for some horrendous human trafficking. And so, this November and December, Doreen and I, my wife and I, are going to Vietnam and Japan for 2 months. And on the docket was, or on the schedule was, maybe we can bounce into Cambodia or into Laos, Doreen said. And I said, nope, that ain't going to happen. I'll never go in that country, either of them, until human trafficking is sorted out. And she looked at me and said, well, what do you mean? I said, so, talking with Alana Stott, ... And so I just laid it out for my wife. And so we both looked at each other in the eye and nodded and said, okay, done. And we'll never go to those countries, ever. Irrespective of all the history that I want to see, the food I want to taste, the culture I want to experience, the all of it. I want to see it all, but I won't. You got to have conviction, or you got to have some sort of righteousness about you when it comes to these kind of things. And so if you've got a good circle of friends, or if you have good influences around you, like Alana and James is the example, like whatever is being said, if you're picking up what they're putting down, you got to hang on to it. These things aren't just matters of convenience. Oh, human trafficking, that's really important to me. But I really want to go vacation in Cambodia. That's not how it works. If something is important enough that it is tangibly concretized into that's a no-go area, it's a no-go area. But through convenience or through, I'll just make one little, this time. That is not how life works for me. And so Alana and James both influenced me and my family and my friends in respect to this conversation of just human trafficking. And I think that's how it's supposed to work, is from the bottom up rather than the top down. So find people who are good people to influence you in good ways so that you're making good adaptive choices.
That's a great point. Steve, you got anything?
I want to hear from James. Did we hit your question? Did it? Yeah, come on.
What do you think?
I mean, yeah, certainly some great insight as far as a transition, loss of identity, loss of tribe, etc. I think that can't be described enough, and this is why, for example, one of the things about the way firefighters are working, given them more time and recovery between shifts, one of the pushbacks I've had is, oh, well, if we do, they'll just work more. It's like, well, good. Don't do extra firefighter shifts, but go do a side project. What do you love to do? Teach surfing, construction, landscaping, personal training. Now you have a second identity, a second tribe. And so that's a very, very healthy thing for you to do. But the adaptability thing, though, I think what I struggle with, and to Dean's point, why I bang my head against a British brick wall, is you have this group of people that are so good at adapting, or were when they were on the ground, or should have been at least, and yet so resistant to change and adaptation when it comes to some of the things most important. So, for example, Steve made the point, a fitness standard in law enforcement, fire, and EMS, where literally lives are at stake, is one of the most resisted things that we have. And it makes no sense whatsoever. So this is where I think the frustration comes from, is, you've got a group of people that should be so malleable, and then they become entrenched into this system, which, I mean, without being dramatic, results in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of first responders losing their lives, hundreds and hundreds of first responder families being broken apart, passing on diseases to our children through sleep deprivation and exposures and all these things. So it is happening. And, to Chance's point, we are seeing now in Florida, 10 fire departments in the last 2 years have started going to this new, healthier, shorter work week, which, surprise, surprise, you show people that you care about them, recruitment has gone through the roof for those departments too. But I think it's just having the humility to look in the mirror when you are in these professions and saying, why are we so, bar up the old bumhole about these areas when we're supposed to be so malleable, flexible, adaptive in our professions? So that's the frustration. We should be so progressive when it comes to this, and yet there's so much pushback on any sort of change when it comes to the profession as a whole.
So I have a postulation here that I wrote down after listening to everybody, and it seems like the way in which you create adaptability is through standards, which is almost the antithesis of adaptability. But it seems like when you hold people accountable to certain standards, certain standards, it creates a bunch of people that are then adaptable, like the military, like police, like fire, like EMS. You're going to hold a certain standard. You need to know this much before we send you out on the road or we send you out into a combat zone. And then there's just like, you're going to deal with all kinds of situations. Giver, have fun. So I just find it rather interesting. And I want to see, does that track? Does that make sense? And that standards almost create adaptability? I'm going to start with Steve. What do you think?
Of course it does, because if you don't have a standard and you enforce a standard, now you have to adapt to that standard. So that's just a given that standards do that. But adaptability, I mean, you could talk about this forever, but it's all around us, but it's so simple, right? And so everyone hit key points of like comfortability, not wanting to do something. How do we affect change? You know, coming from large organizations, we found success in changing a department-wide policy starting small. It affected one unit, and then another unit wanted it, and then it went to another unit. So, and it goes to another, and then it starts to catch that line of sight that you're talking about, like, oh, what's going on down there? Oh man, this is a great idea. Yeah, we briefed about it about 6 months ago, and I didn't get anywhere with you on it, right? You never even responded to my memo. And it just, I've always told people, you can affect change. Absolutely. Is the blood worth it? Because you're going to bleed. And if it's worth it, then what you do is you fight until you get it, and you get as many people on the same page as you to fight with you. But you got to fight smart. You can't fight out of emotion. You have to fight with facts, and you have to fight with experience. And then other people, you're talking about downplaying down on, or not downplaying, but giving it down to someone else that's younger than you. They start to pick up that thing. And oftentimes, there was a program that I initiated, I fought for, I got nowhere. It was pretty big. And then I left and it got initiated. Right. And our whole thing was, we don't care who gets the credit for it. We just want it done because it makes sense. But in a line of law enforcement, firefighters, and even in the military, there's always somewhere along the way that wants to make a name for themselves. And I have given, I refused a press conference one time during one of our training exercises, which is very large. And I let our captain do it because I knew he wanted the notoriety. But my thing was like, I don't care. We're still fast roping onto ferries and doing whatever we're doing, right? And he's getting what he wants. So you learn to play smart on some of these things and give people exactly what they need and want, and you get what you want on the back end. But large scale organizations, no matter where you're at, there's a part line of sight. They don't know what you're doing, so they don't care until you can make them see you. And how do you make them see you? I was the type of guy, we wanted a drone program. Couldn't get it anywhere. Couldn't get it. The sheriff yelled at a chief when he got the memo. He's like, can't get it. Don't ever ask for it again. I literally walked right up to the sheriff and I said, hey, here's what we want to do. We want a drone program. It's the same technology that we're applying on the ground. But when we induce those robots in the house, they're getting fouled up on, underwears and bras and wash baskets. Now we're 4 feet above the ground. And the only thing that'll stop us here is a closed door. And she looked at me and she's like, I like it. Let's do it. Drone program initiated. I don't care. We got it. And that was one of the programs I got initiated just as I was leaving. Right. So that just sometimes you hit the right person somewhere, but I was the willing person to always talk to someone anywhere I was at. And no matter who they were, I showed respect, but if I wanted something, I would push for it. And not everyone's like that, but James, I feel for you. I do, because I've been there and you bleed and you're like, oh my gosh, is this worth it? Like, is someone going to see the light? And before you know it, it'll happen and you'll go, man, why didn't it happen 10 years ago? Why did we have to wait so long? But there's people like you, and there's people like you that are reason that we get the things that we want, because you stay in the fight and you know it's worth it and you're doing it for the right reason. You're not doing it for clout. You know what I mean? So I commend you for that.
Righteous. I like that. Righteous is a great word. But Dean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, we had a similar one to Steve as well in the special forces. We wanted some jet skis. We needed 12 jet skis. But yeah, everyone depends who you're talking to. They're like, well, the AC is the bottom line. They also have to put yourself in their position as well. They've obviously got tight budgets as well, and so it has to fit. So sometimes delivering it by paper doesn't work. You literally sometimes have to, as I say, take the horse to the water, just show them what it was. And for what this was, is actually in Hawaii, the surfers get picked up on the jet skis with the surf baskets on the back. We needed some of them. And all he saw was X Games, Red Bull documentaries and things like that. It wasn't that. But when we explained about diver extraction and things like that, getting into areas, he's like, okay, I get it. So sometimes you have to almost guide them to that and have the explanation and tell them why it's important. But going back to yours one, James, about the fitness levels, I think there's an element of accountability as well. And again, going on where, and it must be frustrating because I know you're a fit guy and you're probably seeing other people who aren't even hitting the levels and you feel like you're carrying their weight as well. It is frustrating. So, I feel like I'm being a bit harsh today. Well, accountability as well. I tell you what, if you don't hit the fitness levels, your wages get dropped by 20%. You know what I mean? And so there has to be an element of accountability because you are in a society where they will get away with it. And as someone touched about it earlier, the next generation are watching that. And they're like, well, they got away with it. Well, so will we. It's just going to have that ripple effect. So there needs to be an element, and it needs to happen now in society. It needs to be accountability. It's like, right, you can't pass that fitness test. That's fine. You 25% pay cut until you do hit that. I mean, if you don't hit it next year, it's going to go down to, and sounds harsh, but there needs to be an element of accountability. And with accountability, you then hit standards. When you hit standards, I mean, you're able to adapt. So, yeah, I just feel like, it's just having this ripple effect. We're just letting people get away with it. I mean, people like yourself, James, Steve, us, we're carrying the weight for others. And so, but it's not a good look for the next generation.
I dig it. I just got a couple comments I want to touch on before we get it. I want to pass this off to Sean too, because I can see him like chomping at the bit. He wants to say something. I just want to get these out of here. Satch in Motion jumped in. Steve is so legit. I love hearing his perspectives on parenting. Definitely taking notes from my daughter and myself. I got notes here, buddy. Don't worry. Dan C jumped in and said, in a way, I was lucky as a cops kid in Saskatchewan. We transferred regularly, so at an early age, I started to learn how to adapt to my environment. But you can lose who you truly are at the core, which is an interesting point, too, because I remember growing up, I moved around a whole bunch, which gave me this great ability to just kind of pick up and go places. But it took me a long time to find the ability to settle once because I had this wanderlust. I just had to go somewhere else. So that's a bit of a piece on that one. And then on the Instagram side, Siepka Ludis jumped in here. Good to see you, buddy. He says, aloha, boys. Keep crushing. Gray Man Project, Brady. Oh, look at these cool dudes. Yeah, we need to have a talk, too. And Annie Oakley, afternoon, gentlemen. Ethos and Arrows Project, big panel today. Yes, absolutely. We're we got a great crew for this conversation. Now, we were just talking about how standards and rules are needed for adaptability, which I 100% agree with. But what kind of, I guess, I want to talk about some of the smaller things that we do every day. Because, I mean, it's great to talk about, the structures and the things. If we want to change, we're going to go talk to this person and spread the impact out. But internally, personally, we talked about humility. We talked a bit about like confidence to be able to just go and do the things that you want to do. But what are your guys' like daily check-in points? What are the things that you guys do every day that help you in your constant adaptability? And I'm going to hit Sean first on this one. What do you think?
So, funnily enough, the Army taught me how to do this quite well. And, it's all basics, fundamentals. With a consistency, a routine of consistency, you can literally do anything in life that you want, that you set your mind to if it's important enough. So I was taught at a very young age in my first career how to make things happen. But, that didn't work for my second career. So I had to learn how to adapt. In my third career, I had to learn how to adapt. And to Dean's point, he's adapting now in the career that he's embracing. And he's probably doing it well because he learned how to do it well in his first career and his second career. And that's the way of it for me. All of life is based on some simple fundamentals that require, to some degree, precision and consistency. You just do what you do every day well. Every moment, do your best every day, as it says above the screen. that algorithm sorts most things out. And so podcasting is the same. Whatever I do after podcasting, I'll do it as well as I can and produce results, and then I'll do it better the next day. And so all of this is pretty simple stuff. We tend to overcomplicate things. We tend to look for 37 Steps to Success, the book that's going to be written tomorrow by some folio who doesn't know how to tie his own shoelaces. I mean, that's what we do as humans. We look for almost like the silver bullets, or we look for the shortcuts. We look for the, where don't I have to sweat in order to learn how to never sweat again. And so we shortcut things as a tribe. And so I found it interesting. Now, Chance, to your maybe question, just recently, like over the last 3 or 4 days, I've noticed on social media, the US Army has started to make an effort to put across the idea that they're pursuing a new standard of performance. And so, right from the command, from the top, the command is stating, these are the standards. This is our fitness standard. This is the dress standard. See how I stand and look? That's what you'll do moving forward now in the future. The standard has been set and you will achieve it and maintain it. And so, like, it was some pretty strong language over the last few days that I've observed from the US Army. And wherever it's coming from and why it's coming, I literally don't care. All I care about is that finally someone's barking about, we've got a standard. Let's get back to achieving it and maintaining it. And so that is where I'm going to leave off with my comment, is what I'm discussing, you can take on as an individual thing. You can do your best every day for the rest of your life, and maybe people will notice, maybe they won't. But more impactfully, it takes senior leadership, people who are in positions of either notable visibility, like maybe Dean, as an example, is in a position of visibility. If Dean is passing down the word that we all got to get consistent, we all got to meet standards, these are how many push-ups I do per day, everyone meet that standard starting tomorrow. If Dean passed the word down, he'd have a large impact. But if he just does it for himself, he'll impact his family. And so I feel that on this subject, as small leaders, big leaders, some kind of leaders, it's our responsibility to put the word out. The standard has to be met consistently, not just for ourselves, but so that others around us can observe that that is the way it's done.
I dig it. I got a comment on the Instagram side that I just have to pass on because it's awesome. Ethos and Arrows Project says, do you think all those generals being summoned by the Secretary of War are there for a surprise PT test? Dun, dun. Who knows? James, you got any thoughts?
I was just writing down two things. I'll tell you a quick story about the first one. When I was when my son was about 3, as we progressed through, when he was really young, if he was naughty, I'd do the little tap on the thigh. And then as he got a little bit older, obviously being a Brit, moving to the States, I kept hearing about this timeout. So I was looking into it. Okay, so if they've been naughty for every year of their age is whatever it was, like 20 seconds or a minute, that they're in timeout. And then you go to them and you say, okay, do you understand what you did wrong? Okay, you can come out of timeout. Well, my son called me out. He's like, I don't want to come out of timeout. And I was like, well, that destroys everything, doesn't it? What am I going to do now? And it was at that point he was just about at the age where, he was old enough to communicate. And I switched to, well, whatever the action was, is that kind or is that unkind? And that's how I've raised him. I never touched him again, never smacked him, nothing like that. And after kind of having that father-son moment, I realized that was, what I believed as well. So when it comes to adaptability or, that internal dialogue that you're talking about, fundamentally, everything that I do comes down to the question, is it kind or is it unkind? So in some of the things that I fought for, is it kind that we keep doing the same thing and it's destroying lives and physical health and mental health and all these things? No. Okay, well then fundamentally that is a truth. Is it kind that 70% of the US is obese or overweight? No. Okay, that's something that needs to change. So that's a real kind of an internal check-in for me, is whatever it is, and if emotion comes in, whatever that happens, to try and just kind of reset and go, is this kind or is this unkind? Is the way I was about to respond kind or unkind? And so then if it's kind, you can dip your knuckles in glass and be aggressive on occasion and do some throat punching once in a while, because it's coming from a good place. You don't have to be rolling over for everything. And then the other side is gratitude. I think a real humbling thing is to just simply be grateful. And I was in the gym the other day doing a CrossFit style workout, and my lungs were burning. And I was, I had the face, the B face, as I call it. And then just something caught me. I was like, but I get to breathe. How many people with COPD don't get to take a full breath now? How many people we've lost that don't get to take a full breath, that don't get to feel this misery in this gym? And so those are the two real check-ins for me, is it kind? And then just simply, I get to do this. Even if at that moment it's not a very pleasant thing, I still get to do this when so many people can't. And then that circles back into kindness. Well, then let's fight for more people be able to do this as well. So that's kind of my intrinsic check-in, if you like.
Dig it. I'm still picturing you with glass on your knuckles, being like, I'm being kind right now. It's amazing. Dean, you got any thoughts on any of this?
No, I love it. I love what James says, kind or unkind. I work in dark and light. In the areas that I operate, whether I'm evacuating people or human trafficking, it's dark and light. But I love that, and I'll take that one forward. I'm just generally just listening and just listening, thinking about my family and how we do things. I think some of you said earlier, Chance, what we do each day. Some consistent thing in our family is all about communication. So every morning start with a cup of coffee with Alana and getting the kids ready for school. We make sure we sit down in the evening, as does Steve with his family, and we sort of debrief and give them a safe space to sort of really open up. And then at the end of the night, Alana and I, we call it 7:30s. 7:30, where everything's off. It's a cup of tea. And I think communication is key, because I think there's a lot of families who don't do this, and then so much goes by. You don't know if one of your children is having an issue at school and things like that. But before you know it, you've caught it too late. And so for us with family, it's just about communication. That's key for us. And then, as is like what James said, instilling kind or unkind. We do it with our kids. They'll talk about other kids, and we'll sort of highlight, is that good or is that bad? And so again, just educating them.
I dig it. Sean, what do you got? You look like you got something.
I do. And just to follow on with what the boys were saying, we do the same thing with our family at the end of the night, or sit down at the dinner table, and no one's allowed to leave the dinner table until there's just one person still finishing off. If there's two people eating, everyone sits at the table, the four of us. So you can speed eat your meal, but you're just going to sit there and hang out until pretty much everyone's done. And so that creates a rhythm, like guidelines, like holding people to certain boundaries. If it was just a case of we're just going to sit down at the dinner table and hang out as a family, someone's going to take an inch, or sorry, give an inch, take a mile. Someone's going to speed eat and leave. And so the boundaries are required. So you set up the proper conversation, but that conversation then becomes consistent. And then the consistency kind of kills the learning, or the consistency kills the adaptability. Because if it's now expected every day to sit down and have a meal and like mandatory talk, then there can be a little bit of resentment. There can be a little bit of, I don't like this. This is not my choice, etc., etc. And so locking into a good pattern that works for the family is important. But it's also equally as important to run pattern interrupts, so that you just do it a bit differently every once in a while, so that you accommodate one of the kids or accommodate whoever is at the table, so that they feel like it's not always just the one way. And so, pattern interrupts. Just want to throw that out there.
I dig that. We sit at the table as well for for any time we're actually eating as a group together. We'll sit at the table, and one thing I never did as a kid was had to ask for permission to leave. But at my table, the kids have to ask for permission to leave, specifically for that reason, is that they will take off and run. And to your point, Sean, we have a deck of cards. I think it's called Our Moments, and it's just a conversation starter random deck, and the kids love it. It asks really great questions for them and gives them something to chew on, something to think about, and to the point that they will ask to pull them out so that we can start chatting around the table, which is great. Steve, what are you thinking?
I love simplicity. Simplicity rules the world. So we do everything pretty simple. My internal, this is what I tell myself every day, and it's what my girls do. Am I doing enough? And it's just simple. Am I doing enough? And if the answer is no, then you know the answer, or you know the solution already, what to do. So you need to go pick it up, or you need to go faster, or you need to put yourself out here. I just had a long talk with a guy the other day. We just trademarked one of our trademarks. We licensed it, I should say. And so we get revenue from one of our trademarks. And I found myself thinking short term. And after I got done talking to this guy, I got in the truck and I was like, I'm not doing enough. I got to think long term, right? And so that just kind of sparked me. But as far as communication goes, that's my communication for myself, but I relay that down to my daughters and with my wife. And so when we communicate, it's direct communication and it's honest. And I've told the daughters ever since they were little, if I lie to you, I offer you nothing. If I'm honest with you, that's where we grow. Now, in honesty, kind of like that little kind, be kind, not kind thing, it's going to hurt because you don't want to hear the truth, right? And so I guarantee all of us have been there. We don't want to hear the truth. It's hurt. But once you can get past that, someone is trying to defame you and someone is actually trying to help you, then you don't have to worry about this internal backlash like, oh my God, they're questioning my integrity. No, they're not. They want to make you better. That's why they're being honest with you. So our communication, we'll talk in the truck. We'll talk at home. We talk everywhere. And so, and I've said this before on my Instagram page, when I'm coaching my daughters or if I'm with my wife, I don't script any of the talks. It's on a mic. If I'm on a mic and I talk, that's how we talk in our house. There's things that we don't show because it's probably too harsh for the world, but we are very bluntly honest with each other. But that's how you grow. So my internal drive is really, am I doing enough? And I just keep things simple and I go from there.
So yeah, Steve, you are direct and to the point with the family. As I said at the start of the podcast, I always noted that. And your most recent videos, I kind of thought like with your wife there, when you were giving her that feedback, and in your verbiage, you actually talk a little bit about how, it's you guys are really direct. I thought, ooh, that is really direct. And I don't know if my wife would take that too well. She has literally said, I will never be able to coach her because she doesn't like saluting. Because I'm freaking, and so you've got to know what's what. And Steve, you've figured it out. And I didn't figure it out. I didn't figure out a way to coach my own wife. She has to be coached by other people. But then this is the interesting part for me. And this is the interesting part for everyone, I feel. I could probably adapt my coaching style to be able to coach my wife. But then, would I be me? Would I be like truly authentic Sean? I wouldn't. I'd feel like I was too diluted. But then I'm underserving my wife. And so there is the rub. We all have to find our balance with the problem in front of us or the solution that we're trying to create. But then sometimes we're not the right person. And so I'm not the right coach for my wife. That's why she's got a couple of other coaches. And so that would be the same for Steve as well. If not now, then sometime in the future with his daughters, there will be a time when he's just not the right dude. And I might not be the right dude, but there's a right person out there. And then as someone who's responsible for others, care and control, command and control, whatever you want to call it, we have to understand that we aren't a one-stop shop. We have to figure out how to do it as well as we can for the people in front of us, but we've always got to keep our eye open for others that are doing it better than we are so we can feed them in. Like this panel, there's Everyone on this panel, I could use at times in my life, in the past, present, and near future, where I would want to say, Steve's the right guy for this combo, James is the right guy for this combo. I'd like to recruit Dean in tomorrow to talk about this to my family. That's what we need as friends and as acquaintances and as influencers within our own families' lives and within our own individual lives, is people that can fill in the gaps for us, for sure, when we need to adapt.
You stole my question, Sean. That was a whole question. Where is the line between when you lose yourself and you know, earlier, Dean, you mentioned your daughter being a chameleon. I was thinking to myself that is a great skill until it's not, until they don't know who they are anymore, until they've shared themselves or they've changed themselves so much that they don't, there's a missing piece there, or perhaps it's just lost in the myriad of other things. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Where is the line for you guys? Dean, I'm going to hit you first. What do you got?
Yeah, like I said, it is a great skill to have a chameleon, but we're also seeing a negative impact of that. You know, my daughter once, no disrespect, dumb herself down a bit to be relatable to those that she's around because she's different. She's English, very intelligent, very smart, been to 50 countries already at the age of 14. So very worldly. So brings so much to the table, but feels like that's a negative. And so from the chameleon aspect to her, she's now dumbifying herself down. And so, yeah, it can be a positive, but also can be a negative. That's where the line is with us, is we now see that, and then we now need to interject into that and sort of explain to them that there's nothing wrong with being different. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but, you know, again, that's why potentially our next move, you know, that's one of the reasons for our next move is to maybe, it's a fast paced here. It's probably a bit too fast paced, very tech orientated. You know, let's slow that pace of life down. Let's give them a bit more freedom, a bit more space. So yeah, so because of what's happening to our children, we're now having to adapt the way that we live as a family. So you, as you said, you never get it right. You just need to keep adapting. And then as we have 3 children, one's 14, one's 9, one's 3. So that, you know, when that 3-year-old then gets up to 14, that may be another change in her life. We just don't know. But we're listening to them all. We're seeing what's happening from an external, and then we're just reacting to that as a family as best possible as we can. So going back to your original one, a chameleon is a great skill, but it also can work against you.
Yeah, absolutely. James, what are you thinking?
So firstly, I mean, from your question, I agree completely, you know, with Dean. I mean, this, if you spread yourself too thinly, you do lose who you are. What I want to throw into the conversation, though, is the opposite. What I've seen is that when autonomy is lost, then adaptability becomes very, very hard. So, you know, whether it is during the pandemic or whether it's within, you know, maybe a toxic environment of a workplace or a first responder organization, conversely, like you said, you can be over adapted, as Sean was alluding to, but also you can be under adapted if you're given this very, very restricting environment. So I think it's an interesting conversation. Where is the parameter on the other side too? How can you stifle adaptability in a profession that you actually want to nurture adaptability?
Interesting. Steve, what are you thinking?
You know, I've kind of told the girls as they grew up, and so they got into CrossFit and they started competing. I have a limited space on certain things, and so my adaptability can take me to great lengths, but I understand that I have shortcomings. So I've always told them, don't just learn from mama or I, learn from other people, because everyone has good insight. If you think that you can't learn from somebody else, you're going to close yourself off and you're going to find only one way to do anything. And so what's worked for me and what's worked for mama all through our lives did pretty good. And there's value in learning from that. But if I'm telling you now and with you talking about how to do a clean and set up this way, and we think we've saturated everything we can to get that clean, and you don't want to go talk to this Olympic coach that coaches Olympians on how to clean, you're gonna stifle yourself, right? And I think what happens there is the ego injects on you and says, no one knows more than me. And that's the stupidest thing you can tell yourself. So absolutely, I've had them go talk to other athletes and just sit back and not join them when they were younger, because I want them to just be fully adapted into what they're being told from this other, and then we'll talk about it later. I didn't want to be over there and have to try to influence or them look at me like me to interrupt and kind of talk for them. So I think ego can damage some of that on certain aspects of the people within your life. Like, no, you can only learn from like this squad. Don't go to that squad. You can't learn anything. And that's dumb. You can. That's why we send people to schools all through the military and law enforcement and fire. We go to schools, outsource schools all the time to learn more things, to bring more skill sets back home. Right. And so if there's a constant willingness to learn, you will always have a constant willingness to grow. And when you stop the learning and you only accept only one way, you're gonna stifle that growth.
Interesting. It seems almost as if there's like a overconfidence humility slider scale that we kind of just have to figure out in between where that level is. Because I'm thinking that like as I become more skillful in anything, as I adapt to that situation, I'm going to get better at it. That's going to boost my confidence in the fact that that becomes my kind of go-to answer. But the ability to have humility and ask other people how to do things, it seems almost conjoined to each other. Sean, you got any thoughts?
So what is interesting about what you just said and what Steve said is that it's not age determined, or it's not tied at the hip to age. So as an example, maybe your son's Chance have a better understanding of the idea of what you just put across. Maybe they understand it better than you do, because you raise them up in a environment where they have a clearer sense of it, whereas perhaps you didn't. And you're still trying to figure it out yourself through your complicated life. But as you're explaining it to your boys, you're simplifying it to a degree where they're actually better understanding it than you are. And so that may not be the case, but I'm trying to make the point that this topic is not tied to age. So again, as an example, Dean's daughter might actually understand this topic better than some of Dean's friends. And some of those friends would be special operators. But it's just that through her young eyes and through her less complicated, less complex, less muddied existence, she actually is a good chameleon, good adapter, and can maybe do it really quick and simply without all of the baggage attached to it, because she's young and hasn't had complications in her life. And so I wouldn't want to rob her of that chameleon-like ability. But at the same time, I wouldn't want her to miss the hard lessons of life. So that is the trick. As a chameleon, you can make your life a whole lot easier in the near term because you rapidly adapt and don't bump into the harsh edges of life quite as much as someone who doesn't rapidly adapt. But you'll pay in the back end because we all have to adapt. And so if you're really chameleon-like, you won't bleed as much in the early phases, but you won't have learned the lessons in the early phases, and you'll pay on the back end. At least that's the way I experienced it, because I was a bit of a chameleon myself. And so, same with my boys, or our sons. They also have a little bit of that chameleon in them as well. So when I recognized that, this is how I dealt with it. And I think this is something for every parent out there that we're all guilty of. I was guilty of it anyway, until I started recognizing that I was doing it. Our kids get involved with other kids, or they get involved with other sports or other adults or other situations. And as I stand there observing it, one of my sons talking with another adult or getting involved with something, like I want to inject myself in. I want to act like a buffer. Like an adult might ask my son a question, and I'll want to get involved in the conversation to act as a buffer for him, where I explain his explanation, or I start pre-explaining his explanation, where I don't give him full personal agency to screw it up. I want to make it easier for him. I want to make it better for him. But I've found that with a chameleon kid or kids, they got to kind of like screw it up all by themselves with no buffer, no little ease of the moment. It's got to sting hard for a chameleon kid so that they learn it now, like rather than buffered. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking for sure. And I'm going to pass it around to the boys here in a second, but Steve's got a jet real quick here, so I want to give him an opportunity to give a quick final thought on anything we've been going over and just say thanks, man. It's been a great combo.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm sorry, I got to go meet my wife. Thanks for having me on. This is a really good actually topic right here. And you could literally talk about this for like another 2 hours because it could just weave into other things. Dean, I'll look you up on Instagram. Same with you, James. And I appreciate you guys. But live life simple, man, and live your life for your family because your family's the only one that's going to have your back, right? You and your family are a team, and you go create and do things in the world and accomplish. And everyone that wins in the team, everyone wins in the team. It just creates individual strength, and it brings more team cohesiveness. It's the same thing that we all grew up in teams, right? I'm just a big family guy in everything I do now. But yeah, I really appreciate it. It was really good seeing you guys again.
Absolutely our pleasure, and we'll make sure I'll hit you up again. Don't worry, you're coming back on. You can't
Roger
run away
that.
from that easy from us. But we'll talk soon. Dean, you got any thoughts on what Sean just dropped?
So I think what I can add. No, I think Sean pretty much nailed it. You know, I'm sort of as again as we're talking, I'm looking, sort of reassessing about my daughter, the chameleon, the pros and the cons of that, and what Steve was saying about family being a team. So, you know, and then also the topic, we always end up starting with a topic heading and we end up going in another direction. So yeah, do your best every day. I think for me is interesting what someone said earlier, that someone's always watching you, and that person always watching is your kids. And so if they see you doing your best every day, you know, that's going to instill that into them, you know. And as James was talking about earlier with people at work, the younger generation are watching. And so for us, the best thing to do is just be that mentor, just for people to look up to. You know, I know that when I get up every day, I'll try and do the best that I can. Sometimes I don't always achieve that. But then as long as I acknowledge that, and then I, you know, look at it slightly different and make yourself accountable. You know, we talk about my new job straight after this call. I've got my call with my CEO. I wanted to put a pipeline in place. I wanted to share with him what I'm doing. And so, you know, otherwise he can let me just go do what I want to do. But I think you have to hold yourself accountable, because then it gives me a reason to be getting up every day and making those phone calls and having those meetings. So, so yeah, just keep showing up every day. You don't know who's watching. You know, we have a thing, and you might have same in your military, Sean. You just get these students that worked well when watched. You know what I mean? Only when there was instructors around. You know, you'd spot them, but it's the ones that are watching. You know, watching you when you don't realize that they're there, and that's our children and society as well. So that's for me.
Yeah, I agree. And the fun part is is everybody watching? Everybody's watching me. Sean, what do you got?
Well, everyone's watching Dean more than they're watching us. I mean, I think. Don't you? Dean, don't you think? Like, I think you've got a lot of eyeballs on you. So how does that feel?
Yeah, you'll have a lot of eyeballs. Don't get me wrong, it's hard. You know, I don't do so much on social media anymore. You know, I'm there. I have a presence that people watch, but it makes me accountable. It makes me accountable. But also it's hard because every time you want to do something, everyone's expecting this high level. It's like, you know,
I am.
Yeah.
I know I am. I'm expecting a high level from you every single time, for real.
Yeah, and so, you know, so it is a bit of a motivator. You're right. I need to be held accountable. I've set the standard of the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. It's also sometimes nice just to have a relax and chill out and switch off. And I find that sometimes struggle, but that then goes on to the pressures of today's society on social media. You know, I always say this to people, don't listen to social media. Those people are on there, you know, take an element of that, but they're only showing you the good things. They're not showing you the bad things. And so, but it's hard. I would hate to be a child growing up in today's society, just purely because of those peer pressures as well. I feel it as a 48-year-old adult that I need to be showing up and achieving every day. And I try and will. But yeah, I'm mindful of the fact that the world is watching everything you do and everything you say. And so, yeah, it's difficult, but it's pressure self-induced. You know what I mean?
It is. So that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
It is self-induced pressure. Yeah. I mean, you might be feeling a bit of pressure from Alana, but it's probably tasteful pressure. But how much pressure do you put on yourself? Like, how
A lot.
much?
Yeah, well, interesting enough, when I did the bike ride, I remember we had the documentary team. The director was saying to Lana, said, this guy shows no emotion. He's stoic. You know, he's literally achieving everything he said he's going to achieve for the day. And we actually then got it randomly. I had a conversation with one of the film crew, and we didn't realize the camera was on me from the side. And he's like, you know what? You know, I was very fortunate. I didn't have pressures from the sponsors. I didn't have pressures from the charities. The pressure I had, you know, was self-induced. I told the world that the ethos of the Special Forces was the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. How does that look to the world if I failed it? So for me, the only pressure I was under is that I could go back to a bar in Hereford or Poole and not get pulled apart by the guys. And that was it.
Yeah,
There wasn't any external pressures. And actually, you know, so yeah, there's an element that you put yourself, but that's good because you're then making yourself accountable. If I wasn't then holding myself accountable or have the standards, then I wouldn't have been under pressure, and I may not have achieved it in such a manner that I did.
So then today, you know, like in our modern world, like today, do you still put on the same amount of pressure on yourself today as you did when you're in the thick of it during the cycling event?
Yeah, I do, because then it becomes the norm, if that makes sense. You know,
just to me.
I always put myself in those situations because then it becomes a norm. You know, how do you deal with that pressure? You know, and so yeah, but then again, it's different when we are doing an event. There's an additional element of pressure, but no, I always do. Just becomes the norm for me.
So then, as part of the conversation on adaptability, it feels to me like using yourself as an example, or myself, certainly, the pressure that we put on ourselves is the pressure of, you know, are we trying to create diamonds? Are we trying to create silt? What are we trying to create? I'm trying to create excellence. And so, generally speaking, that requires more pressure. And that pressure is self-induced. And so I've got the dial to 11 instead of 9. And so I like adaptation. But if I'm running my own adaptation, it's generally at a fiery pace. And so is that the case for you? Or have you learned how to modulate it? Or does Alana modulate it? Or how does it work?
Obviously, Alana has a big input into everything, but it's interesting. I'll just listen to ourselves chatting, you know, and I'm always like, yeah, excellence, you know, show up every day. But again, that's not a good message for people out there as well. They want to see you struggle. They want to see you fail. You need to humanize yourself to people. You know, amount of people say, well, I can't do that because I'm not such and such. So that no, I was 5'7" and 130 pounds when I joined the army. I'm not the person I am today. And we talked about earlier, everyone wants to know about the silver bullet or that one pill that you can take to turn from 18 to SEAL Team 6. It's like, no, there's a lot of work and failure and stuff behind the scenes. And so that needs to come out as well. That needs to be transparent. And I'm probably not as good at doing that. I'm probably not good at sharing that. And something, I know that because I have this persona of the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. So I need to show him the finished product. I need to show him me achieving what I'm achieving. And so, but that's not a great learning tool either. And so, in fact, I'm telling you that knows that I know that I need to be changing that on my social media as well.
Yeah, well, so do I. And here's the fascinating tie it all together part. First time I was on a podcast with James was asking me kind of specific or directed questions about, you know, like I'm 5'9" and 135 pounds when I joined the army. So I was like yourself. I was big British ears and a skinny rake, and I was getting my ass whooped. But you know, like people wouldn't know that to look at me now. They wouldn't know that I was a pencil neck 135 pounder as a kid. And I also had to say to James, not had to, I wanted to explain to James when he asked me that question, was that I thought I was dumb because school had made me believe that I was dumb. I thought I was an underperformer because I didn't have an environment to perform in. The Army provided me all of those things. The Army taught me a ton of things. But if not for the military to teach me all of those things, I'd still be in my mind a 135-pound skinny underperforming kid that was dumb. But I entered into things that taught me that I'm adaptable and that I'm capable and that I can pursue excellence. And so now my main theme is to try to put that word out on the street that you can be anything that you want. But at the same time, listening to Dean and thinking about James, my message should also be, as Dean said, man, I didn't think I was going to amount to much, but I amounted to more than I ever thought because I adapted. And perhaps most critically of all, I adapted in environments of my own choosing, surrounded by people who I thought were good mentors, with an outcome that I had visualized as that's what I want. And so, if not for all of those things in my head, again, I'd still be a 135-pound, skinny, underperforming kid.
You bring up a great point in not just the physical adaptation, being able to change in the moment and do something different from what you were just doing, but the mental and emotional adaptability to ride the waves, as you and I have talked about before. But I was just thinking about what Dean was saying, is that like the world's going to knock you down, and social media gives us like a minute and a half views of someone's everyday life, and it's really easy to curtail what it is I put out on there versus just showing them what the truth of the matter is, which is everybody stumbles, everybody makes mistakes, everybody fails at things that they try, everybody makes a plan and it explodes, and then they got to figure it out on the way. And I'm loving where we're going. James, you got any thoughts?
Actually, kind of dovetailing off what Dean was saying, with those Instagram highlights, if we're not careful, what's not told is the rest and recovery portion. And if you look at, sports science, when you're training, it's not when you're training that you get stronger. It's when you sleep and your muscles and ligaments and tendons repair and they're a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger next time, and you rinse and repeat. When you learn a skill, whether you're stripping a weapon or doing a rope rescue, you're not immediately better at that skill. It's when you sleep. So I think that, one of the dangers of putting I always refer to Jocko, the 4:30 wake up and all the workout things. That's great. And if you're an accountant that you've never been in any kind of distress whatsoever, then that might be a great message. But if you're a sleep deprived first responder, and now you're saying, and I'm going to get up at 4:30 and I'm going to do the 48 challenge where every 4 hours I'm going to run whatever it is, 5 miles. You're missing the bigger picture, which is, Dean and Sean and, all these like tier one people that we know. They didn't get there by just never resting and never sleeping. It was a very measured, and it may not, 20 plus years ago, it was, we were just destroying people. But now we understand sports science, that it's a very measured, high level of exertion and stress coupled with, deliberate rest and recovery. And I think that that's where we get into danger, because adaptation happens when you're actually resting, not when you're going through that stress. It's the processing of that stress, the learning from it, and the growth from it.
I dig it. There's so perhaps then, Dean mentioned earlier about evolution, and that you have different evolutions in your life, and then perhaps that the lineage then goes from being able to adapt in the moment to such a degree that you eventually have to evolve who you are, or not perhaps who you are, but perhaps what you're doing or your core group of people. What do you got?
So within special operations, I'm sure within the military now as a whole, it is called evolutions. What's the next evolution? What's the evolution at 1300 hours? What is it that we've got set up as an evolution? Or think of evolution as a word meaning the next routine. Routine to routine to routine, evolution to evolution to evolution. You have to do a number of evolutions to evolve. And that's the way it is. I mean, you don't typically evolve in one evolution. You need several evolutions in order to observe the pattern and then work against the pattern. Because an n equals 1 isn't enough information to evolve. It is just a data point. You need at least 2 data points to compare a pattern and then evolve from the pattern. And so evolutions, the plural form, creates evolution. And so that means consistent, multiple efforts to figure out what's going on, to evolve. And so the military's really good at evolutions. As Dean said, when he was making a loose comparison, perhaps between the fire service and Tier 1 special operations, our budgets allow for us, or allowed special operations to do more perhaps than a fire service budget would. But more importantly, the focus of the evolution within special operations is to do the fundamentals so well that we need curveballs. And so the curveballs, the sideways actions that we're not expecting, that's what comes with Tier 1 special operations or high-level operations. It is evolutions that are complex rather than just repetitions of things. And so you need lots of reps, but you need lots of sideballs to evolve.
Okay, so let me reiterate this, because I got a picture in my head, and thinking about the evolutionary family trees of certain things. So, I mean, if you take humans, for example, there were multiple stages of different humans as you go back in time. And each one of those stages, as you're saying, Sean, is an evolution in and of itself. But in order to evolve as a larger group, those needed to be either perhaps maybe called out, but the mistakes needed to be exposed. It's just what I got from your guys's from your description of Tier 1, is that you're being put in evolutions to specifically expose faults that you can then fix. Does that make sense? Tracking on that? Well, let's get some thoughts, James. What are you thinking? You look like you got something on your mind.
No, I didn't. I was actually thinking of absolutely nothing apart from listening to you. So let me just think about that for a second. But I think it's true, and it's going back to what Dean was saying, what Sean was just highlighting too. It is the same in the fire service. There's a lot of Instagram theatrics in fire. You know, guys that will film themselves in shorts and t-shirt, and they've got to have the helmet on. You know, forcing doors and stuff, and that's not the basics. That's not realism. The realism is just, you know, the absolute fundamentals. But I would argue in the gear that you're using, maybe after, you know, a 5-minute max effort row, so you actually have the fatigue as well. But those evolutions of initially getting the basics down, then getting the basics down in the gear that's required, and then maybe again simulating those basics now in a high-rise evolution, so you've done that cardio prior, and then throwing, you know, trying to imagine all the different things that could go wrong. And I agree that is evolution. And then again, coupled with sensible, in our case, cooling, because we overheat in that gear so quickly, and rest and recovery. But yet, if you're constantly trying to figure out these curveballs that you were talking about, then when it comes to the real world, hopefully you will be prepared. So that is the evolution of firefighter operations, the skills. And it's the same going back to kind of earlier in the conversation. If you know, I don't know who actually said it because it was misrepresented, I think, but, you know, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. As a profession, we haven't evolved. And this is what we're trying to kind of, you know, change now, is that we're doing the same thing over and over again. And we're stuck in, you know, Homo sapien or whatever, you know, phase, because we're not survival of the fittest. We're not moving forward. We're not figuring out what are the things that we are doing wrong with the firefighter work week, with the way we represent law enforcement politically, whatever it is that is just causing this brick wall. So I think applying, you know, what you've talked about operationally, the evolutions, that has to be applied organizationally as well. So, you know, we're amazing at, you know, forcing a door, making entry, and finding the seat of the fire and extinguishing it, but yet we're still burying our men and women. You know, operationally, we're excelling at evolutions. Overall, organizationally, we're actually failing at evolutions.
It's a great point. I'm gonna come to Dean next, but he looks like he's on the move, so I'll give him a second. But Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, I feel for Dean. I saw him starting to twitch there. It is 6 o'clock. So I'll say this, that one of the interesting things about evolutions is you can learn how to evolve just by yourself, of course. More people around you applying more pressure, you'll evolve faster. But evolution, using your example, Chance, of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals and the various species of man, all evolution, as it's considered as a subject, is based on the knowledge that we have right now. But just yesterday, I think it was, from Joe Rogan, I saw that he'd posted up a skull that was 1,000,000 years old, discovered from 1,000,000 years ago. And so, like, oh, that's going to change things in the history books and theories and how we evolved. Like now, 2 days ago, there were a boatload of people on the planet who thought that they knew how humans had evolved. And now, as of yesterday, all of that's out the window. And that's the way it is with new information. We think we've got a grip on the evolution process that we're in, whatever subject it is, until new, and I mean radically new information comes along. And that radically new information doesn't have to be a 1,000,000-year-old skull discovered in a cave. It could be Dean stepping into James's office, leaning against a wall and saying something that James has never heard of before from anyone on the planet. And that was enough. That's the 1,000,000-year-old skull that just changed evolution for James. And so the skull is just the new information. It's how that information is picked up by the person who's receiving the information that changes the world. So as an example, if Joe Rogan hadn't have put out the word on the street that there's a 1,000,000-year-old skull hanging around, I'd be none the wiser. I mean, I might see it in the news, but I wouldn't see it quite as dramatically as Joe dropped it down on his Instagram account. And so my evolution of thought, maybe a few years ago, if I would have seen that on Joe's account, I'd have been like, Joey's a bit suspect. He's a comedian. What does he know? That's what I would have probably thought. But now Joe is talking to so many people. He's so plugged in. He's changed his delivery of information to some degree that now when it went up yesterday, I was like, oh, I got to pay attention to this. So I've evolved in my relationship with Joe's process so that I now know more about evolution, believe it or not. So Chance, your example, Neanderthal, Homo sapien, etc., that's all good until the new information comes along,
That's a great point. Dean, what are you thinking?
Yes, always adapting, always moving, just changing the scenery. It was interesting. I was listening. In fact, it was your little Sapper logo which got me thinking there, Chance. Because I don't know if people realize I was a Sapper before I went Special Forces, so came from the engineer background. But one of the things that was instilled, there was a free worded quote in the military, and it wasn't press ups down. It was improvise, adapt, and overcome. And from day one that I was in the military, that they taught you that. Is to improvise, to adapt, and to overcome. And so that's something that gets instilled. So going back to your what we're talking about, the difference between the mindset of the military is that from day one, they're already forcing that mindset onto you. And then you guys were talking about special operations training. Is it they're looking for you to fail? No, they're just looking at the way that how you sort of assess that situation, what you're going to do. But I'm just trying to think of all the different scenarios that we had. And what we used to do is always go back to the basics. Everything we did was to go back to the basics. Everyone will try and complicate things. And I don't know if it's the same with yours, Sean, but our selection, our tier 1 selection process is basically the basics just done well. But over time, people take shortcuts. Because if you do the basics well, it's actually quite hard. and so really, adaptability isn't that difficult. You know, as long as you have those basics, you know, you can adapt to any sort of situation. But yeah, that was one for me, is just sort of reminiscing on my time, my early years in the military, and you know, the fact that was from the age of 17, improvise, adapt, overcome in everything. And then yeah, naturally that plays out either through training or actually on operations as well. Yeah, that's me.
I dig it. I dig it.
You know
Sean, what do
what's
you got?
interesting about standards is I can look Dean in the eye right now and know that he's good to go. And how do I know that? Because as Dean said, like when he asked the question, maybe rhetorically, I don't know how your standards are set up for Tier 1 Special Operations selection, Sean. I can tell you loosely, I'll infer, I won't say specifically, of course. But I can say this, generally speaking, that they're the same because our standards were based on your standards. When we kicked off, it was based on your standards that were already existing. And so that's a loose statement. Don't anyone ever write that in a book and carve it into a stone tablet. But having said that, I now know that Dean is a known substance. He's a known product. He's a known entity to me because we've gone through the same thing to some degree, at least in the selection processes. And so that is standards, man. Those standards help me understand Dean, just as those standards in Chance's military career help me understand Chance. And those standards within James's firefighting career help me understand James. And the more you understand the standards at a deeper level, the more you understand the person in front of you. And so if you're not a standards-based person and you don't pay attention to these kind of things, then you probably don't understand the person in front of you. But I know Dean as well as most people know Dean based on what he said in respect to selection process. And so all of these commonalities in my life and in James's life, as an example, his commonalities and my commonalities are enough for us to understand each other pretty well because we've gone through enough that is similar, that we're a known product to each other. But I feel like there's a lot of people out there that aren't in a standards-based environment enough for me to understand them as a known entity or a known product. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I'm tracking that for sure. I just want a quick comment here. Alana Stott, good to see Alana. She says back to basics, exactly what the world needs right now, and I could not agree more. We are running a little short on time here. I have one quick thought, and then I want to get your guys' final thoughts on this too. Dean, you mentioned it earlier, is that sometimes you can find it difficult when like you're so used to being able to work at such a high level that there are times where it becomes difficult when it's just quiet, when there's nothing to do. And I'm wondering on this ability to adapt, is there a point where you get so good at adapting that not adapting becomes extraneous, it becomes too much of an issue or not too much of an issue, but like really challenging to deal with?
No, I like to learn. I like to adapt. It's interesting. Something James said earlier is that because you're constantly, performing, it's that time to rest. It's that time to relax. That's what I struggle with. And Alana's on now, and she'll she'll back that up 100%. But also the problem, not a problem at all. We have in our house, we have two high performers. And so I'm holding myself accountable to Alana, and then she's also holding herself accountable to us. And so actually, sometimes you need a third party to say, right, there's other relationships where that might not be the case. And it's the grounding is the other partner who sort of brings them back down to reality. And so our family dynamic is very unique, that you have two very highly driven individuals. And, if I feel like I'm not performing on a day, I think, I need to hold myself accountable to Lana, and she's probably thinking the same. And actually, we've highlighted this is sometimes we do need to just switch off. We do need to just rest, because you cannot perform at that level 365 days a year, and 24/7. It's just not sustainable. But again, that comes with experience. I know how far I can push myself and how long I can push myself, but it doesn't mean I have to do it all the time. And so, sometimes it's nice to have someone to say to you, like, yeah, just back off the gas. I always have this analogy that your body's like a river. It needs to keep flowing. As soon as it comes stagnant, that's when illness forms, these little pools. But it doesn't always have to be a grade 6 waterfall. It can be just a steady trickle. And then, but yeah, again, I get that wrong sometimes, and Alana will back me up on that. And so, but it's hard because you've spent your majority of your life at that high standard, high level, and you have social media, you have people looking, it's almost expected of you. But humanize yourself, take a rest, trip up, maybe have a bit of a fall, and let them know that no, you're not unique. You are just as everyone else is.
I dig it. There's a line that I use actually pretty regularly, and it's everyone is unique, but no one's special. And that's a fun one that I like to use. Alana jumped in here, said Molly says there's 3 high performers. So just in case she's listening too. That's awesome. James, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have. There's actually a picture on my son's wall. My sister got it. It's a Banksy painting, like a print, of course. And it says, I think it says, when you're tired, learn to rest, not quit. And I think that's kind of, again, adding to what Dean was saying. When you are so turned on, and again, you are trying to literally adapt, you're trying to innovate in the world, you're trying to be kind of like a thought leader when it comes to new ideas. I'm sure everyone in the studio is familiar with the sensation of waking up and immediately your brain is already turning over 100%, and then right when you lay your head to get ready to go to sleep, it's the same. So kind of adding to what you were saying, Chance, in the question, I agree. One of the problems of being so deep into adaptation, into trying to innovate, into trying to bring solutions to areas that are causing suffering, is that it is hard to then pump the brakes. It is hard to take a knee sometimes. So some of the most deliberate work I have to do is that meditation, is that session on Newcom, which is this great app that I use. And it is leaving my phone at home and walking my dog, because that's adaptation too. But it's not the move forward, charge kind of adaptation that we've been kind of talking about. It's the other adaptation. How can I adapt to hitting pause, taking that knee, getting some rest and recovery, especially when you understand. And I'll give you a good kind of like analogy. Kirk Parsley, Navy SEAL turned physician, was talking about productivity. For every hour of sleep you lose an hour and a half of productivity. So there's a point of, I forget what that term is now, but diminishing return, where you think you're, working, burning the candle at both ends, but it's actually you're losing time. So, adapting to being deliberate with your rest, that in turn will pay dividends in further adaptation down the road.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure, to Sean's chagrin, there have been times that I've been up at very late hours trying to craft a video, and then I've had to say, you know what? No, I'm going to bed. Like, I'm not doing it. And then Sean will give me some accountability in the morning for sure. Now, Sean, do you have any quick thoughts on this before we jump into final thoughts?
I do. I want to just add my 2 cents to this. Slow it down on the adaptation phase, recovery phase, where you take all of the lessons in and truly can own the adaptation. All adaptation starts internally before it starts externally. I mean, you've got to understand what you're seeking in an adaptation way, and then you've got to reflect on the moment to see if you are actually adapting. So all of the external adaptations that you make aren't worth a bucket unless you can understand the advantages they're presenting to you in the present or near future. So internally reflecting on adaptation is far more important than externally just adapting. And so how I do that, it's already been mentioned, and that is through meditation or self-reflection. And so every freaking day I meditate. And I do 2 forms of meditation. It's a passive meditation where I just super chillax and don't let anyone bug me in my little internal world. And that just requires me to be somewhere quiet-ish. But then I have moving meditation where I'm either riding my mountain bike or hitting a heavy bag or whatever the heck I'm doing. For Dean, it might be while he's shooting. If you're really good at something that you can drop into a flow state, empty your mind and disappear as an ego, then that is a form of moving meditation. So without the internal adaptation, all the external adaptation barely counts in my books. So again, for rest and recovery, self-reflection is a part of that.
Bam. I love it. Well, we are just about 2 hours right now, so let's pull back, maybe get centered within ourselves for a second. And any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brains? Dean, what do you got?
I'm just waiting for the background noise to leave.
Come back. I'll
I feel
come
like
back
a
to you.
magnet.
I'll come back to you. James, what are your final thoughts?
No, I don't really have anything to add, to be honest. It's been an interesting conversation. We've kind of, explored quite a few areas of this this realm that we found ourselves in. But no, I mean, it's the bottom line is obviously everyone that's been on this call today has certainly been in, their version of extreme stress and high performance. And then I think, as we've alluded to this last little bit, kind of underlining that also comes with the opposite, the yin and the yang, the extreme, high level of exertion, high level of stress, high level of expected performance, but then the rest and recovery, the reflection that's so important as well. So I got nothing really to add apart from that.
I dig it. Dean, coming back to you. What do you got?
Yeah, again, nothing really to add what we discussed and what James is there. I think for me is as we touched on, is just with the adaptability, and working at high performance, is just take time for that rest. Just take time for that rest. Listen to other people as well. For me, as I said, I'm probably guilty more than anyone of not listening. But yeah, no, it's been a great conversation. I loved having Steve on. I don't think I would be able to coach my wife like Steve is. That one really surprised me. There's not a chance Alana would have me coaching her or my kids. So I need to check out his Instagram, see how he's mastered that one. Yeah.
It's way more direct than I would ever be able to get away with. That is for sure. But if it works for them, then good on them, man. It's awesome. Sean, any final thoughts?
Yeah. So Dean, I'm not pushing back now. I know that you said something there that I think maybe you didn't fully think through, and you said you don't listen to people as much as you should, or worse the effect of them. That's not true. I know that's not true, because you wouldn't be in the position that you're in right now if that was the case. And so
I do listen. It's whether I apply it or not.
That's right. That's
right.
right.
I do listen. Everything I'll take on, but whether I actually put that into an application,
perfect.
It's two different things. Yeah.
It surely is. It surely is. And I'm glad you stated that, because that is precisely where I'm going to go with that. I know that Dean listens to everything, to include Alana, and that he takes in and owns what he needs to own. And in order to do that, to have success in life, you've got to listen to the external world, take it all in, and then you've got to listen to your internal world to own it. And that's what Dean has done. He's listened to all the good advice around him on the 360 throughout his life, and then he's taken it internally, and he's made his own decisions. He's listened to his own internal voice in a way that he wants to. And that is a long and hard-learned process, by the way. You can listen to the entire world and accept it as gospel and carry on, or you can listen to the entire world and self-selectively, internally, decide what serves you best and the team around you. That is a learned skill that I feel isn't talked about often enough. And so Dean does listen to the world, but more correctly, he listens to himself maybe a little more closely than just the entire world.
And just to add to that, I think, you do listen to people, but as you touched on We're everyone's unique. We're not special. So what might work for them may not work for you. So, for example, when I was doing my bike ride training, everyone's like, "Oh, this is how Mark Beaumont cycles. This is that's fine. It's great." I'm not Mark Beaumont. I'm not Dang, but I did take some things of that. I'm going to apply it myself, but going a little bit deeper. I recently went on a journey and I got taught about how the brain works. And the brain, every brain is unique. You can have identical twins and they look the same, but their brains are very different. There's things that all four of us here on this call will agree on, but we won't agree on everything. And so however how the brain works, the brain will interpret what it sees and give it the best outcome for you. That's not the same as everyone else. So I have this sometimes where I argue with people, not argue with people. We'll discuss and I say, well, that's common sense. That might be common sense for me, but that might not be common sense for them. And so as we going back to my thing, I do listen, but my brain will interpret what is best for me. And sometimes that might not be right, but I feel like I can, like I say, I can probably do stuff differently from others. And so that's something I've picked up recently on a journey, and that's helped me a lot as well. Understand other people, but also understand myself.
I dig it. I don't have really anything to add. I just want to thank you guys. It's been an awesome conversation, James, Sean, Dean, as well as Steve. This has just been fantastic. And there's so much good information here, and I'm not going to muddy the waters with it. So as I continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week. Chimo. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.